Please welcome the Vice President of Design at Marriott International, Aliya Khan, and President of Curator Hotel and Resort Collection, Jennifer Barnwell, in conversation with Skift Senior Hospitality Editor, Sean O'Neill.
So I'm very excited about this panel for the past couple of weeks because this is going to be a fun thought leadership thing. This is a fun topic to talk about. We, in our Skift Megatrends 2023, are all about how we are traveling differently. And so the question of this panel is sort of like, how will hotels sort of respond in their design and innovation? Aliya and Jen, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Happy to be here, yeah.
Aliya, maybe we start with you. So do you buy the theory that we are traveling differently? And
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. And it's exciting as an opportunity, you know, what we do with that and how we adapt and change and evolve. You know, somebody earlier said it's a time of creativity, and I totally feel it, and I know I'm not alone in that.
Yeah. Our CEO thinks that this might be one of the most creative years in travel. So we're hoping. Jen, do you believe we're traveling differently?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think, you know, not to go too far in the past, but, you know, I look at everything through the independent lens, which is what the Curator collection is. And, you know, we really had, maybe fortunately, although it was an unfortunate circumstance, a great run during the pandemic, because the independents, you know, tended to be kind of in resort locations, drive-to locations, excepting out, of course, the ones in the urban locations that were hit pretty hard. And, you know, we found that, as a lot of people have said already, people definitely want to travel, especially when, you know, you want something you can't have, right? So even kind of talking about business travel a little bit, I mean, it was kind of like a no-brainer. I mean, all of us probably in this room and, you know, a lot of people that we, you know, work with and are affiliated with and even in our families, it was a no-brainer to travel. It was like, if you want to have a meeting, great, I can be there this day, that day, hop on a plane, a hotel room, like fine, whatever. Like it's almost like mindless and easy. And then it gets completely cut off and you have a lot of time to think about it. And I think business travel is coming back. We are seeing it coming back, but you know, it's different because people had a lot of time to think about it, how they want to travel, when they want to travel, what's important to them. So we are seeing it a little bit different in terms of the business travel. And specifically, it's kind of a little bit hard to figure it out because it was really easy. Oh, you know, whoever's at your hotel Tuesday through Thursday, they're certainly business travelers. They're there for business. They probably booked meeting space. But if someone arrives on a Sunday and stays through Thursday, or arrives on a Thursday and stays till the next Monday, you kind of don't always know, and they may not be booking through their company for the room. But we're seeing in the independent space, we're seeing the demand. We're seeing the customers have the money to spend. They want to congregate in spaces. They want the F&B offerings, just as was mentioned earlier. We don't necessarily have a pricing problem, but the services have to be there, and they'll take advantage of them for sure. So you got to make sure that your offerings are there.
Okay. So Curator, which you lead, was launched in 2020. And some people in this room may have been distracted in 2020 by other things.
We didn't mean to launch during a pandemic. I always get that question. The idea was already kind of getting off the ground in 2019, but sometimes good things take a little bit of time.
So what is Curator for people who may not know?
Yeah, happy to talk about it. So, you know, I like to talk a little bit about independence because obviously that's the basis of what Curator is, but it's really hard being an independent hotelier, whether you're an owner or an operator. There's no playbook, you know, there's no kind of plug and play. You have to make every single decision and pick everything. And that's what I think makes it amazing and exciting, but it's just really difficult and challenging. And I had the good fortune of working at Pebblebrook Hotel Trust, a publicly traded hotel REIT.
Pebblebrook,
yeah. And I was an asset manager there, so I kind of saw both sides, but was so fortunate to work on so many independent hotels and their renovations and relaunching of those products. And we found, you could kind of call it a white space or a gap, where we didn't really see independents necessarily banding together for mutual benefit, where it's not really a competitive space, right? I mean, like independents, they all need POS systems and PMS systems and revenue systems and different platforms and technology and a deal with an AV company and a deal with parking operators. And why not come together, have a cooperative for that on the cost and profitability side, because we don't have the economies of scale, as an independent, one-off hotel or even a small group of hotels. So at its very essence, that's what Curator is. It's a collection of independents that come together. And my team at Curator, we go out and look across, as many disciplines as we can, almost everything, you need to professionally operate an independent hotel. And we have an alternative or sometimes multiple alternatives in that space. So you can feel good that every partner we've done a deal with or whoever we recommend, they've been fully vetted, long RFP process. We even pilot test things that we need to from time to time, and you're going to get better pricing than you would on your own. You're not going to get big brand pricing because that's impossible in the independent space, but you're certainly going to do a lot better than you would be if you're on your own.
Okay. So Curator is a cooperative for independents, and so one thing is you can have more buying power for tech and other things that
Exactly.
you need to buy. And you guys, like with Pebblebrook, might test out some of the software, make sure that it's good, and then say it's optional. The partners don't have to use any particular tech.
Actually, everything in Curator is optional because that's kind of one of the tenets of being an independent hotel. I mean, you pick and choose everything you do or don't do. You can add things and subtract things kind of at your leisure, depending on the kind of hotel operation you want to have and depending on what your guests expect. So everything is at the whim and decision of each hotel owner and operator. We just have a long list of offerings that we put out there, we describe. We think we've picked the best vendors in each space to partner with, and we'll do our best to put them forth and try to make sure that the hotels are engaging with our partners, but every decision is up to the hotel itself.
How many hotels are in your network?
We have 97 and growing. So we got a little bit of momentum at year end, and we've got some good momentum going into Q1. So we'll be over 100 soon, and then more to come after that.
And just to build on this a little more, there's other things that out there, like small luxury hotels of the world and global hotel alliance and stuff. So why work with you guys instead of others?
So we're not mutually exclusive. Right now, the way Curator is positioned, it's more B2B, meaning it's meant for the hotel owners ultimately to benefit from a profitability standpoint because we can bring your expenses down. That being said, we're starting to kind of tiptoe and pivot into more customer-facing things. One of the main things we try to do on the customer-facing side is help amplify the hotel and amplify the brand through our website, through our social media channels, through all of our PR efforts. And there's going to be a lot more happening this year that I can't disclose yet, but kind of
we'll get it out of you by the
tiptoeing
end
there,
of the conversation.
on the customer-facing side of things.
Okay. Thank you for that. So Aliya, maybe you started out your hospitality career at the top of the chain scale, sort of with W, and you had a great team at Starwood, and now at Marriott, you oversaw the Aloft launch,
Yes.
and then the rebrand more recently.
Correct.
And you look at it's Moxie and Element. What else do you cover?
I have to count on my fingers. So it's the lifestyle brands. So Westin, Le Méridien, Autograph, Tribute, Renaissance, Aloft, Element, AC, and Moxie.
Okay, that's a
9
lot.
brands. And, as you were speaking, I was thinking to myself, with Marriott, or at least for what I do at Marriott, for me, it's like I have these 9 children, and they all have unique personalities. And certainly there is an efficiency and a logic to the bigger sort of hospitality sort of representation and what we offer. But how do you make sure that the personality of the 9 children communicates through every step of the guest experience? And, get comfortable with what works for one may not work for the other, and what's memorable for one is not necessarily memorable for the other. And that's what makes our world so exciting. How do you create these individual personalities that are tied to that sort of passion for each brand?
So let's build on that. So one of the most popular articles Skift ever ran was 30 Marriott Brands Explained. I think you're now at 31 because you're about to acquire a City Express in Mexico, maybe. But conceptually, when you think of the matrix, or you think of those 9 brands you directly oversee, and you talked about like their character traits, like family, children, quirks. So what drives it? Does it come from the supply side that the developers need a certain amount of property in the 18 million to 20 and they need it to be conversions? Or does it come through like psychographics, or like how do you what's the lens you use?
I think for design specifically, it's all about understanding the psychographic, right? Who is that guest? What do they want? What are they looking for? Certainly, I think the times we're living in today are influencing guest needs and desires, and how do we step up as designers and respond to that, you know? And that's kind of, I think, the approach. Now, certainly, that's paired with the logic that comes with the efficiencies of cost to build and operating costs and all of those things. But you know, even within those sort of business parameters, there's enough room to really kind of connect with the guests. And you know, I love that today's guest is so clear on what they want, and they see the nuance, and they're very well versed. And you know, Gen Z alone, I mean, that's probably a whole hour right there, you know. And how do we responsibly step up and speak to those needs and desires and present these different experiences?
So one of our megatrends is that hotels are making emotion the new brand standard. And one of the arguments we made for that is that people are lonelier now than they were maybe a decade ago. And so if your brand is able to create an emotional connection, then you have a better chance of like having success with your audience. So Jen, does that resonate with you?
Can I make a joke and say,
Please.
Finally, everyone caught up to where independents have been for years? Yeah, I mean, truly, that's the core DNA of what independent hotels kind of have always been. And in my opinion, it's a brand of one. So you really, you know, make your best efforts to, I mean, it's everything. And I've seen this whole, you know, trajectory through the way we had done things when I was previously at Pebblebrook with independents. It's, you know, you really hone in on a concept. You want, you know, a story. You want storytelling to follow through the guest journey. It's everything. It's so fun and exciting, and we have lots of consultants that help us with it, of course, but everything from the name to the logo, the interior design. And I've had the luxury, Aliya and I were talking backstage, we've worked on a W together, which was like really fantastic experience. But in the independent space, it's endless. The flexibility is completely there. You can do kind of anything you want. That being said, independents kind of historically have been known for having a sense of place. You know, so when you get to the hotel, you realize, oh, I'm in San Francisco, or oh, I'm, you know, in Napa Valley, or, you know, I'm at the beach. Like, it's very present and obvious. But we have so much flexibility to have so much fun and try so many different things with, like, even I've had so much fun with uniforms and just, you know, the SOPs for your operating team. How do they check in guests, and what do they say, and what are your in-room amenities? It's just this like endlessly kind of inspiring and creative process. And you know, something my CEO kind of always, you know, echoed during the design process was, you know, I'm guessing you would want people to have more of a positive reaction than negative, but he wasn't always upset if someone had a very negative reaction to something. It's like, you want the reaction, you want the feelings, you want some kind of connection to what you're doing, so it resonates and you can, you know, make the memories.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think is so important. You cannot be everything for everyone. Mm-hmm. And get comfortable with that. And know that, you know, certainly for us with our over 30 brands, you know, if one thing isn't right for you, I promise you, we've got something that is. And, you know, how do you stay true to that and really tell that real story for that brand? Because today's traveler knows better, you know, frankly.
Is that the biggest mistake someone designing a brand would have today, is not trying to be too crowd-pleasing to too many people?
You know, and yes, but I will say this. I am really grateful and pleased to see that conversation is changing, mm-hmm. and people are understanding the value of, you know, differentiation and being able to distinguish, and it's a good thing. It wasn't always that way. Certainly when I started in hospitality design, there was why can't you be more like that? And it's like, well, because this is different, and guests want different. And today it's, that much more important.
So do you buy that emotion is a key thread? And could you give an example maybe with one of your family of brands, like Moxie versus Weston or
Sure,
versus Le Méridien?
absolutely correct. And, Moxie is what I call our young brand. It is, certainly for a younger traveler. They are the people who want to be in a public space. They want to be surrounded by, they want to be one in a pool of strangers, even if they're doing their thing. They are social. For them, their room is this, I call it the Swiss watch. It's like this very efficiently designed small space. Excellent sleep, great shower, all of that. But the energy and the passion around the stay is in the public area. Now pair that against a sister brand, Weston, which is all about wellness. And, wellness, as all of us know, it's more than just a day's trip to the spa now. It's how you sleep, it's how you shower, it's all of those components, what you choose to eat, how you work out, how you recover from workout. We've done a lot of work on recovery. And we kind of joke about how it's not just your workout, but maybe you stayed at a Westin and went to a wedding, and what is your recovery the next day? Right? Like, we've got all these amazing partnerships with Hyperice and all these other things where you're like, oh, it's a lot more than just I ran, far too much, because some of us don't run. So, it's how do you sort of start to play into that intelligence and really speak to that guest and what they are going to be looking for. And, eventually, maybe in time, the Moxie guest will become a Westin guest or, a St. Regis guest. But in their moment, for where they are, really being able to differentiate and speak to what you said, that emotional appeal.
Mm-hmm. It echoes what Harry was saying on stage earlier, that Expedia also found that wellness is something, and the new
Correct.
version of wellness.
Forest bathing.
Forest bathing, yes. Sylvian.
I like the Hindi word better.
Yeah. Sylvian. How do you say it, Sylvian, I guess?
He's going to have to say it for
yes,
you. But
great.
I just remember, I made a note. I'm like,
one of our megatrends is the changing face of human capital in travel. It's a labor megatrend. And so I'm wondering a bit about, you have an aspiration to try to help the hotel workers in your collective with training. Could you talk a little bit about that vision?
Yeah, certainly. Labor is a continual problem, unfortunately, or I shouldn't say problem, but a challenge. And there's kind of many reasons for that, and we're hoping to kind of come together and solve it. But part of what we set out to do with Curator was also try to be an innovator in that we could really dive in and see what's new in the industry in terms of systems and platforms and IT and products, and deep dive on them, pilot them out, and just make them available. Because again, in the independent space, it's across many hotels now, but resources can be limited, and these are kind of small owner operators that may not have a lot of time to go out and figure these things out. So one of those things, we have kind of a long list of them, is we've partnered with this partners called One Huddle, and they call it the gamification of training. And it's kind of fun. We tried it out in Curator too, and it's an app on your phone. It's just kind of like a fun and different way to engage with your employees, and it's actually a training module, but it's made a little bit more fun, maybe for the younger set that is on their phones and kind of used to those visuals and that interaction anyway. But it does get to the root of training. It's a different way of doing training, and it's something that you don't have to sit in a meeting room with water and coffee for 5 hours with the corporate team at a management company. You can do your training in a much more frequent manner and kind of like more fun and interactive. And we did it within Curator, and had all these questions and kind of made fun of each other. And it was, it was like it's just something different and fun.
As One Huddle.
The number one, and then Huddle. Okay. Yeah.
I find that's really a potentially huge, powerful thing for the whole travel industry, because gamification of training, like a lot of times, there's several destinations that are trying to develop their capability. A lot of their capability got wiped out in the pandemic. You can't have the workplace training, like you said, the classic kind of training. Maybe the hospitality schools can't reach in for the destination management. So I think there's a bigger trend here potentially with the gamification of travel. Another of training. Another of our mega trends is that super luxury is going to go next level. And the idea is that the Amans of the world, where you're charging like $5,000 a night, you can never underestimate how much people will pay for a night at a hotel if you can go to that next level of experience. So does that sort of ring true to you? And if that's true, how does that affect the space where you are? Does it make things more expansive in how you can play, or does it cause you more problems because customer expectations have now risen and it's hard to deliver?
I mean, I would say it doesn't surprise me, and perhaps that's where things go. I don't have a lot of experience in kind of the ultra high luxury space, and it's not encapsulated within Curator today. We certainly have some independents, mostly in the resort areas, that have extremely high ADRs, and it's, has to do with kind of scarcity and location, the small size of the hotels. But there's a lot of wealth in the world, right? So as long as there's someone to fund those developments, we'd have to kind of think about what the offering is. What is it? Is it houses? Is it just gigantic rooms and this is, your territory, but what are the finishes and what are the amenities that go along with it? And the service levels must be something we've never seen before, right?
I think it's that notion of experience, right? What can we be doing as experience makers? Whether it's the materials, how we partner in programming. How do you tell a real story? Not a canned story, but a real story. I recently was just at the Ivans in Lisbon. It's one of our newer autograph collections. And, there's a very sort of specific story to the building. It communicates in the architecture, but it pulls through in every component of the guest experience. It didn't feel contrived. It felt quite organic. And I think that's, to me, the magic. Certainly there is a place in the world for the Amans of the world or the St. Regis, or, we certainly have a significant amount of product in that. But just at this sort of full service lifestyle perspective, how do you deliver a real story from a location that's memorable, but it feels real? And, you walk through it and you think, I know where I am. I'm not pretending to be somewhere else. So I've now gotten that sense of local, but in a memorable way. I mean, that bathroom, let me tell you, this photo doesn't do it justice. But, it's like that component.
This is the Ivans autograph.
This is the
there it
Ivans,
is, yeah.
yes.
Good
yes.
timing. Planned that.
Yeah, so Le Méridien, one of your brands, like in Philadelphia, like on the window, it's printed.
Correct.
Here's like a little information about the jazz history of the city.
Right.
Something, little touches, you have that sense of place.
So for that, it was, I actually did those a really long time ago. Now I'm dating myself. But, it was like 12 or 15 different quotes. And each one was intended to kind of give you an alternate perspective on the city. And depending on which room you were in or what window you were looking through, you caught that. And it was the alternate art, as it were, because Philadelphia, every window overlooks an incredible
view.
Building. Why would you try and deviate or take anyone's attention away from that?
Well, the joke internally is always, when we're going through design presentations or we've gone to see a hotel, if someone uses the word nice, it's like death, right? It's like the last thing you want to hear. And I've done hotel tours, and then the next day I'm like, I can't really remember anything. Like, that's also the worst part. So we both strive to make sure that's not the experience.
I mean,
in
that's
anything
what
we work on.
Keeps me awake at night. Having worked with you, I know it does you as well. And, that's what people remember. That's the magic. And that's what ties back to the emotion.
Well, how do you operationalize this? So I tried to talk about how in the upcoming year we have to have a much more blended business travel model, much more cross-disciplinary. So when you started your hospitality career, you started at Starwood. You were lucky with a group of people it was an innovation module pod. When you're at VP of design at Marriott, how do you sort of create the structures that encourage expansiveness and passion and ideation?
I think a lot of it is just sort of try things, test them, play with them. We have this sort of lab area, if you will, where we build things. I mean, We were just
So
talking
this is the
about
Marriott headquarters, and it's like your fourth floor or something?
yes, on the fourth floor in the Innovation Center. You should all come and visit. But it's this idea of we built things. So this was through the pandemic. We were working on some stuff for AC, which is subsequently launched, and we were building things in foam core and to scale and testing them out because we weren't doing a model room in the middle of the pandemic. And you kind of pull things together, and then you have different subject matter specialists come through. The operations people came through, and they sort of moved things around. And then we tested lighting, and we're like, oh, well, this is a little bright. Let's work on this. And so a lot of it is try things, play with them.
Did you try fragrances? I swear the first ACs I went into, it was sort of like an Abercrombie and Fitch. Like there's
So that might have preceded my time. We do have a lovely fragrance now. We actually worked with Chorus, which is I'm sorry, with Joya. Chorus is the bath amenities. Joya, they are an incredible fragrance resource, and kind of fun for a creative. You sort of sit there and you talk about what the experience is, and you use these really abstract words. And here's this, I'm telling you, he is like a magician, master mixer of things. And he's like, smell this, what do you think about this? And you're like, that captures the words. And that's a little bit of like what design is, right? Mm-hmm. There are these words that are put forward by a brand team and by our consumers and what they relate to. And then we take that and we distill it into an actual experience. And it's part magic, part science, very fun, very fun. But I guess you just kind of have to get into it and, and test ideas, put them out there and take the feedback and evolve the ideas. And, we do things and you watch them over a couple of years and you're like, okay, that went well. Or maybe I might refine that and be open about evolution. Everything we do is evolving, all of us.
And I think emotion is one of the five senses. It's a very powerful connecting to get all the senses involved, I guess. So Jen, you both worked on the W, and you're both sort of in lifestyle now. So let's say my Mega Million numbers come in.
Did you get your ticket?
I got my tickets. And I decided to invest in like hotels. So I talked to my new financial advisor, calling him on my Tesla. And I say, I don't know. It seems like the financial advisor is going to say the safer hotel bet is to go with the global chain. You've got this, they've got the whole system going behind them. So let's do a soft brand. That's the safer bet. Why should I create an independent property and go like the Curator model? What drives that kind of? Maybe you could describe some of the people who choose to gravitate.
Oh, absolutely. I think, part of it, frankly, just goes to control. So again, I come from a background where I worked for a publicly traded hotel REIT, and we had both. We were diversified, and I've worked on both, and there's definitely positives and negatives of both. It's just different. So it depends on your investment profile in terms of, how much control you want to have. If you're going to go with a big brand, typically, you're going to be locked in for, a minimum of 10 years. The bigger brands, probably 20. But what goes along with that is the power, the machine, and I don't mean that negatively, of the big brand behind it. They have so many resources, obviously huge awareness, all the systems you'll ever need, all the brand standards you'll ever need. And it is kind of more straightforward. If you want, more control, really meaning like all the control and all the decision making and, the capital and the operation, and you can bring managers in and out and you can decide how you want it to look and feel and, everything, then you need to go into that space. They're very different. You can obviously do both and diversify yourself. And, if you won Mega Millions, you don't need a loan, so you can do independent, right? Because sometimes, certain lenders, they just think having a brand, is a safer bet. But, there's a lot of lenders out there that understand the independent space too. Because in many markets, we have found that the true independent hotels can actually drive a higher rate and higher profitability because you don't have all those various brand charges and fees, to deal with. So a lot can drop to the bottom line if you are successful, at the top line with your hotel operation. So there's room for everybody. One isn't better than the other. They're just very different.
So at our Skift Global Forum in New York, our CEO, Rafat, he talked to the head of Ennismore, the CEO of Ennismore.
Yeah.
And the Ennismore's CEO sort of had a statistic. He was saying that something like only 3% of the world's hotel inventory is lifestyle, but the demand is much bigger than that. And that wasn't coming from him, he was quoting it from somewhere else. Do you have any research, do you have a sense that that's roughly correct, that the demand for lifestyle is vastly more than the supply currently?
I don't have those stats
Okay.
in my back pocket, unfortunately. I can tell you, we have, at certain times, like especially over the pandemic, some of the stats I have seen, it's so specific to that period of time though, taking outside of the urban core, independents, performing better maybe from an occupancy standpoint and rate standpoint than some branded hotels. But it's a smaller pool. I don't have like the overall stats, but I can say we definitely really feel good about the demand patterns and the demand trends in the independent space.
And how do you feel? So it's been 20 years, like lifestyle is on the lips of everyone now. Well, how do you feel like lifestyle is now compared to where it was either? Yeah.
I think now it's almost even more real now, because now it's at every level, right? It's when at the inception of W, they were the first to do a living room, right? A lobby was more than just the transactional place where, you went, you checked in, and maybe you sat on a beautiful bench and waited for someone before you left to go out for the night. And they took all of that and made it an experience. And now everybody's doing it,
Yeah.
Everyone at every price point. And I love that that is happening. And I think what it now forces you to do, or commits you to do, is actually be really authentic about how you do it. This is a really small example, but even something like hotel art, that art, it better be real, it better be authentic, it better be interesting, because nobody wants to see a black and white photo of the Eiffel Tower anymore in Paris. We're past that, and we've all seen it, right? We've seen it, we've lived it. And I think that's the magic for us, how do you pull that through? And
So we have an audience question. So how is inflation affecting new hotel design at Marriott regionally? This builds on what you're talking about. So has it forced value engineering of hotels, forcing owners to sort of pay up, delay openings? Is it affecting their design budget?
So, I think we all know that where the world is with the cost to build right now. I think some of what we have been looking at from a design perspective is the business of design, right? So last year, we as a group spent a lot of time looking at the process of renovation. There was a time in hotel design and experience where we'd be like, here are your 500 drawings and here are your 500 specs. Please use all of this and renovate your hotel. And we've kind of taken the position, we're testing it out with Moxie now to say, well, do you really need to change all of that? How about we really focus on where the refresh is needed? What are your guests saying to you when you stay in your hotels? What's good? What's successful? What's tired? And how do we then sort of focus our energy there so that you're spending your money in the right places, instead of, having to sort of spend it across the board to fulfill a brand standard? And I'm sure that's a world you're living quite closely as well. And, if you're an independent, you can do that. So we have to take that independent mindset for our bigger box to be able to speak to some of that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a balancing act, and obviously you know this too. It's like, if it's time to renovate, you want it to have enough of an impact so everyone realizes you renovated and it looks refreshed and it looks great. And, not everyone is perfect. I mean, over time and, my past history, we've done some kind of, just the capital, requests here and there, and capital decisions you have to make. You can't always do everything whenever you want. So you have to kind of pick and choose. And then you do the things you pick to do. And then you're like, oh man, those curtains look terrible now because everything else is new. Or the bedside tables really stand out as horrible now. But, that's the decisions you are faced with as an investor, unless you have endless capital, which, I've been fortunate to work for companies that have a lot of capital, but you have to be a responsible investor. So that's kind of always been the approach I've understood, unless, in some cases it's so bad, you're shutting down the hotel and redoing everything because you're relaunching a different name and everything. But otherwise, you do have to be smart about what you do and what your scope is going to be and make sure it has the impact you need. And you also don't forget about the back of house. So it's great if the guest room looks beautiful and everything is brand new, but if the heat, the fan coil unit in the room is too loud, or there's no hot water, or the shower pressure is terrible, it ruins everything. So you got to balance front of house and back of house and your investment parameters all together.
Okay, so we're nearly out of time. So one lightning round question from the audience. So I'm going to paraphrase this. The desk chairs are often horrible at hotels. And I can tell you that I just was at this hotel
Not
I'm
at
staying
ours,
at, and I'm
right?
like, it's like a child's kindergarten. So how is it, are you at the brands you oversee, is it getting better?
I mean, now we're really sort of looking at desks. There was a time when a desk was for one person, and now it's, with all this blended travel, you might have 2 adults and a child in a hotel room, and somebody's doing Zoom school and somebody's doing something else. So it's transcended just a desk to how do I offer pockets or spaces for more than one person, and then how do you seat them comfortably? And I joke about how you should be able to put 2 room service trays down together or 2 laptops down, and then what are you sitting on, and what's the principal chair, and it better be comfortable, and what's the pull-up chair, and I mean that consumes us. And it's, I think, what guests look for. Lighting, all of that, it's all part of the tactical experience that you can do fantastic, original, inspiring local things, but you do have to solve for the cost of entry need that every guest looks for. And I think with blended travel, those needs are a whole new set, which means we're all going to step up and try and solve it differently.
That's reassuring.
Yeah.
I have to end it there, unfortunately, Jen, but thank you so much, both of you, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.